Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, moms and dads, children of all ages, welcome to Outside Oaxaca. We are going to be speaking for the next 90 minutes. Well, actually, we're going to be speaking for the next 84 minutes because Sal was late. Speaking for the next 84 minutes about mezcal outside of Oaxaca. You know, I find so often when we talk about mezcal, there is just this unspoken assumption uh, that what we're talking about is Oaxaca, and mezcal is so much bigger than just Oaxaca. And in fact, I think when you start talking about it outside of that Oaxacan context, I think the issues become much more complex. So that's the purpose of this evening's seminar, and and I invite everybody to send questions via Q&A. I am not going to let Sal and Herman look at them because I want them to not think about you, the audience. I kind of want them to be speaking with each other. And I'll look at your questions and I'll throw them over to them as I see the opportunities to take those questions live into our Q&A. This is being taped, as you saw me starting the tape, and it will be shared afterwards. It's live on YouTube right now, but then it'll also be archived on the Sacred YouTube page. If you can go over to the Sacred YouTube page and I think you subscribe or follow or whatever it is you do with YouTube. I'm supposed to get 100 people before I can actually change the URL to be the name Sacred Agave. So that would help me a lot if you could do that. I did a session like this last two Fridays ago with my friends at Neta and Respiral and Cinco Sentidos. That is available on the Sacred YouTube page. And next week, I'm going to be doing a session with a few different nonprofits that two of them I know very well and work with in Oaxaca, and then one is new to me. But we're going to be talking about how this pandemic is affecting the different communities in Oaxaca and what they're doing to try and minimize the damage. Uh, and then the following Friday, I'm going to be doing a Palenque tour with Cruz de Fuego in Oaxaca. And I think, are you doing a Palenque tour coming up here, Sal?
Yes,
Uh,
I believe it's Tuesday of next week. We're going to be doing a live tour of our newest vinata in Indaparapeo, Michoacan. So signups for that can happen on ladunamezcal.com forward slash
Nice.
live dash tour. So that's what we're going to be doing. If anyone wants to participate and join in, I'm going to be sharing today. I grabbed some good footage uh, with this great 3D camera that Lou let me borrow, and of Cotija. So we were in Cotija today, and I got a chance to grab some good footage from there to show people through that of what Cotija is about, and then we have the Indaparapeo one as well. So we're going to be doing that one live.
Cool. And I'm going to be sending an email out to everybody who signed up for this tomorrow or the next day with the link to the archived video, and I'll include the information for that sign up as well. And in addition, Sal, as you know, I'm going to be doing some educational tasting sessions coming up soon for people in the hospitality industry, and I will be pouring. I won't be pouring. I will be. You will be serving, in essence, the La Luna mezcals to them. They can pick them up at local pickup spots. Um, and then we'll be doing some Zoom sessions with them. So if you are a hospitality worker, please go sign up at laluna.com/sacred, and we'll send you a little sampler kit, and you'll get some signups in an email so that you can sign up, and I'll walk you through them. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. So Sal, you actually have your La Luna Mezcal tag in your handle. If people, did you get yours, Herman? You did not. Such a bad
No, I
man.
couldn't. I couldn't figure it out how to do it.
So if you are posting anything to Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, if you could please tag our handles. Don't tag me on Twitter. I don't do Twitter. Twitter scares me. But please tag us, and then maybe we get some more followers, and that helps us build this world of agave spirits. Also, I spent 2 weeks, a couple of weeks ago, every evening, every afternoon, doing a 4:30 to 6 o'clock happy hour. It was just groups of 5 and 6 people, tiny groups, And I dig this where we get a whole bunch of people. What are we up? We're up to 41 people right now. Who are watching us via um, what is that? Watching us via Zoom, and 11 watching. Oh, I gotta shut that down. 11 watching us over on YouTube, and it's really cool that we can get like over 50 people participating in this way, right? But I gotta say, for me, I think the genius of this platform is the ability to interact with people, and we can't interact with these people who are off on this other side because there's too many of us, right? So I love doing these happy hours. If anybody wants to drink with me from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central Time in the next 2 weeks, just send an email back to the email I'm going to be sending off tomorrow, and I'll set you up in small groups of 5 to 6. Okay, so let me introduce my guests. First up, we've got German Gutierrez. German is the owner of the brand Lágrimas de Dolores. Did I butcher the Spanish on that one?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Okay. So, German, I got it was either a call or a bunch of texts from Susan Koss at Mezcalistas, and she was talking about this amazing Sotal she had from this brand Lágrimas de Dolores that I'd never heard of. And like 2 weeks later, a week later, I end up in this meeting room in Chicago, in Uptown, I think it was, somewhere on the north side, where Pro Mexico had invited me to participate in this tasting. And it was, I don't know, like 7 or 8 different brands that had come up from Mexico. I didn't understand at the time that the vast majority, I think all but one, were from Durango. Um, we just went, they went around the room, and there were like 3 of us participating, tasting and talking. And and Herman was like at the end of the table. And when I tasted his mezcal, it just mind-blowingly delicious. And it caused me to stop and look again at his label, and I realized, oh, this is the guy that Susan told me about. And we ended up, I mean, is it an exaggeration to say we ended up spending like the next 2 days just eating and drinking, at least, for my eating and drinking hours. I'm sure you were up later than me.
Yeah, I remember. After that, we texted, we met up. Where was it? I think it was in Estéreo, right? No. Yeah, maybe it was Estéreo. And then after that, we just went bar hopping all over Chicago.
Yeah.
That was an awesome time.
Yeah, it was great fun, and yeah, it was great fun. So Herman has a beautiful operation in the state of Durango. He imports or exports, I guess, both certified mezcal and a handful of agave spirits, or just one agave spirit.
Not yet, actually, but we will start exporting some mezcales that we haven't been able to certify. But yeah, that's coming, I guess, as soon as this pandemic is over.
There you go. So that's Herman, and then we also have Sal from La Luna Mezcal, Salvador Chavez. Why don't you call yourself Chava, Sal? Why is it Salvador and not Chava? I thought all Salvadors were Chavas.
They are, yeah. I mean, growing up, I was Chavito. That's what my parents called me, because my dad is Chavita. Because I'm a junior, and now my oldest son is the third. So we call him Chavito. So I adopted kind of Chava, and it became kind of like, I allow anyone to call me Chava that is willing to. So anyone that gets to know me as Chava and they call me Chava, I respond to it. So as this journey has progressed, I think Salvador has become much more dominant, and then Chava second, and then Sal definitely third.
Really? I'm calling you by like your third name?
Well, now, I mean, it's 2020. Maybe 2016, it would have been Sal would have been first. Things have just
okay. That's fair. And it's interesting. Just as I found out about Herman through Susan, it was another woman who introduced me to what you're doing, Sal. Caitlin Lehman had taken over Mezcaleria Las Flores, right? And I walked in there one evening, and she said, "Hey, you've got to try this bottle." And I hadn't heard of your brand before either, and I was blown away, first by the taste, of course, and then by the lower price. I'd expected after I tasted it for it to be one of these $100 bottles, and that was your Cupriata.
Yeah.
So we struck up a friendship. I don't even remember how we ended up connecting in person, honestly, but we struck up a friendship after that, and you surprised me. I don't know, like a year ago, when you came to an event with these 3 bottles of small batch stuff, right? And I'd already been singing your praises for uh, what some people would call your cocktail bottles, I guess. Though I like, to me, it's so delicious drinking it neat. I just, yeah, I hesitated to call it a cocktail brand. And you brought out these 3 small expressions that I love all 3 of them, but boy, your Tequilana to me is sort of the missing link between tequila and traditional or heritage mezcal. So yeah, I'm and so you of course produce. I shouldn't say of course. So you produce all of your mezcals, and everything you do is certified. You produce all of your mezcals in Michoacan. And I'm just really excited to have 2 of my favorite people here talking about these 2 very different states. I've spent quite a bit of time now in Durango and only a little bit of time in Michoacan, though I expect that that'll be changing. So yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, let's talk.
Okay, so can you guys give overviews of your brands, what it is that you do and how you do it? Germán, you want to start?
Sure. Well, my brand is called Lágrimas de Dolores, but we also make another brand called Cenizo Colonial. All of our mezcales are from Durango, from the state of Durango, from different regions in Durango. Initially, I mean, we started kind of as a hobby or a dream that my father had of making mezcal. We have a cattle ranch, which is in the south of the state of Durango, right where the grasslands meets the mountains. I mean, the kind of the main activity there was is still cattle ranching, but since there was so much agave, my father one day just decided to start making mezcal, and that was around 15 years ago.
And he was making it himself, or he had somebody make it
for him? He looked everywhere for someone to make it for him, even jimadores and the entire process. So that's how it kind of like kickstarted. In fact, it's kind of funny. One of our first batches was actually made in Oaxaca. We ended up shipping a bunch of piñas all the way to Oaxaca to get it made there, just to see what it would taste like with a different process to what is. I mean, there is not one traditional way of making mezcal in Durango, but what the traditional ways were considered. And since then, it has been kind of like an identity of Lágrimas de Dolores to experiment with different processes. Even our vinateros that have been making mezcal for generations, one kind of like common trait that they all have is that they're all very open to innovation. They're all very curious to see what other people are doing, and they're not afraid of applying new techniques, which is pretty awesome. That's one of the many things that we look for whenever we start working with a new vinatero. Sorry, vinatero is palenquero. If anyone is familiar with the words, with the terminology in Oaxaca.
There's the first difference, right? Different language.
So in Durango, it's mostly called vinatas. Those are the distilleries, so not palenques like in Oaxaca, but you do find some other places that call it either fábrica or they call it taberna, but it's very rare. I mean, mostly in Durango it's called vinata. Palenque is definitely not a distillery. That's where people go for cockfights.
Duly noted.
And well, yeah, I mean, it progressed. I mean, it was never a business for the first like around, I don't know, 10 years mostly. I finished university and then I came back to Durango and I started working with my family. So I took over Lágrimas de Dolores. And
But
so
hang on, I'm sorry, I'm curious. So you said that it was just a hobby for your father. So when you
yes,
say you took it over, you came in and you had the idea to turn it into a business, or he said, "Hey, this is what I want you to do," or what? How did you make that jump?
I mean that's the reason why I came back, why I decided to come back, because when I was I was studying abroad, and all I saw was, I mean, it was kind of like the beginning of mezcal becoming popular, and all I saw was mezcal from Oaxaca, and there's nothing against that. It's just that I mean, growing up in Durango, I know that there are very good mezcales in Durango, and my father was already making one. I mean, even though it was being sold only in 2 stores back in the day, it was still very good, and it was definitely worthy of being exported. So I had the idea, I'm gonna come back and start something with this, because I mean it has huge potential. Um, so at the beginning, we were only using our magueyes and using the mezcal that we produced in our own distillery. But gradually, we changed our focus because we wanted to represent what mezcal meant in the whole state of Durango. And I mean, I would love to do that in kind of like a broader term, like what mezcal is like in Mexico, but it's impossible, you know. Mexico is such a huge territory. I mean, I'm having a hard time. I mean, not a hard time, because I actually absolutely love my job, but it's a very difficult process to try to represent mezcal in Durango. It's such a huge state. It's the fourth largest state in Mexico, but it's a very cute dog, Chava, by the
Oh
way.
my God, that's a beautiful dog. Stop you, Herman. Okay, this is Esteban's dog.
I just met him right now. He's very nice. He's obviously very, very, very.
That is
Sorry.
a beautiful dog. Esteban, we're gonna have our own Zoom next week, and we're gonna just me and your dog. Okay. Anyway, sorry, Herman.
No worries. I got distracted. So yeah, I mean, our next step was just try to represent everything that mezcal meant all over Durango. So Durango is the fourth largest state in Mexico, but it's also one of the least populated. So that means there are huge amounts of land which are completely unpopulated. Makes distances absolutely massive. It makes places extremely remote. And that's actually one of the reasons why mezcal flourished in the first place in Durango. I mean, these were places that were making mezcal obviously outside of the law, technically, and that's why they were in such like hidden, remote areas, and they've been making mezcal for many generations.
When you say outside of the law, Herman, like when did it become legal again to make mezcal in Durango?
I mean, it's still illegal if you're not certified and if you're not
Really?
paying taxes. If you're not paying taxes, yes.
Even if you're just making it for yourself, for your own consumption.
Actually, I'm not sure about that, but I mean that's not why people make mezcal.
Well,
people.
Some of the people I've met, that's clearly why they make mezcal. But I get what you're saying.
No, I know what I mean, but like it always has a commercial purpose. Whenever you find a vinata in the mountains, it's not for just for fun. I mean, even though these people all show a passion for making mezcal, they all sell to the local communities. Most of the time, that mezcal is not even known in Durango. So that's why it was such an amazing adventure, because once I got here, I used to talk to all of the people in the bar scene here in Durango, all of the people that knew mezcal. And most people thought that mezcal was made from only cenizo. So once we started venturing more into the mountains, we started seeing that in certain communities, they made mezcal from Castilla. In other ones, they make mezcal from Masparillo. You know, like the most recent agave that I have ever seen was Wocomay in the High Sierra of Tepehuanes. That was only a year ago. So we're kind of like in an age of discovery right now in Durango, which is what makes it so fascinating at the moment.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you, Herman. And Sal, you want to give us your brief on La Luna?
Yeah, La Luna Mezcal for me, and it's grown more to today. It became a passion project of going back to my roots. I was born in the United States. I was born in Santa Rosa, California, My father was born in Cotija, Michoacan. And so for me, at one point, it became an intention to go down to Michoacan and source mezcal. This was around 2014, 2015. And at this point, the project really just seemed like going back to the state and sourcing something. And it was under the La Luna Mezcal brand and bringing it up to the States. And then eventually, I probably never really realized how enamored I would become and how connected I would become back with Michoacan and Mexico as a whole. And so then, because both my parents were born in Mexico, I was able to become a Mexican citizen. So I was able to obtain dual citizenship. And so I became a partner down in Michoacan, really with the intention of growing the representation of our agaves through our production. So it's very similar to what Hernan is talking about in the sense of bringing together all of the diversity of agave to a brand. The biggest difference probably might be that I wanted to challenge myself to try to find a way to produce these things, right? So we had our vinatas, and now we have multiple vinatas. At the time, we just had one, and it was to find tequilana, to your point of the tequilana expression that you mentioned.
And just to be clear, tequilana is Blue Weber agave, and it's the only agave that you can use when you're making tequila, right?
Yeah. And Michoacan has both denominations of origins to make mezcal and tequila. So there's an abundance of Blue Weber across the state. Some regions heavier than others, but there's a lot of it. And we have some estate-grown Blue Weber through a partner that's here in Michoacan. And so with the tequilana, the Manto Saguayo obviously comes from Saguayo. To find the Bruto and do the Bruto. To do a different expression of Chino, which is Cupriata, but done a little differently in the Chino Silvestre expression. So really, it just became that. It really just became this growing intention of representing the state in whatever it has to offer, and that's still happening, right? So I loved hearing Herman's story because I think it overlaps in the sense that we're still finding different agave in Michoacan, and we have different expressions coming out. Like, doing a Salmiana from Michoacan didn't seem like something we were going to do a year ago, and then finding it in the state of Michoacan and releasing a pulquero out of the state is going to be kind of fun. And so it's kind of that growing intention of fully representing the state, of what it can offer. Mezcal here, obviously production similarities between Durango and Michoacan overlap pretty heavily with some exceptions. And so, that's kind of what the brand is and how it's evolved over time. You're on mute.
No, I think we lost.
Sorry. My wife is downstairs talking to the dogs. I was afraid it was too loud.
Oh.
So we'll get into the meat of things in a second, but you said two things that I want to jump back to, Sal. Chava. So one is you've got dual citizenship.
Yeah.
That means you don't really have to wait in lines anytime you go into either country.
No.
Okay, jealous. Can I marry you? Does that give me dual citizenship?
No, I can't do that because I'm already married, so I can't.
I'm married too.
Oh, there you go. Well, man, maybe you put the loophole. Let's talk about it.
There you go. So that's one. The other thing is, you said Cotija, and I was busy looking at my notes. But did you mention that your family makes cheese?
Yeah, my uncles, cousins, they still make cheese in different parts of Cotija, Lourdes, and different areas of Cotija. So even today, when we were in Cotija this morning. Actually, we just got back not too long ago, and going to the local cheese shop and asking them if they had cheese from my tío Crescencio. He's like, oh well, he sells out, so we can't buy from him, but he makes great cheese. So we have a stronger lineage in terms of production. We have a stronger lineage of making Cotija cheese than we do actually making mezcal.
Right. So when do we get your cheese here in the USA? When do we get to see a La Luna cheese, a La Luna Cotija in the USA?
Now, there's a little bit of work to be done. Look, here's some Cotija cheese right here.
God bless you, Esteban. Look at that. You've got like your own assistant.
Esteban's stash. He just bought some right now. It's delicious, and it's really cool. Similar to mezcal, going into the little store, you go in there and they offer you different samples of different kinds of cheese that have different complexities, right? Some are saltier, some are a little bit more creamy.
Yeah.
And we go into the back, they have a little aging room because a lot of it is aged over time. and you get to see it. So the overlap there's kind of crazy in terms of how we treat mezcal and how Cotija treats cheese, especially. There's a lot of overlap. So soon, hopefully, Lou, to answer your question. Soon.
Amen. As soon as I get my pineapple distillate, we'll also have cheese. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. I'm going to throw the first question at Sal, and just to sort of back up, we're talking again about mezcal, certified mezcal outside of Oaxaca, which begs the question, what does that mean, certification? And literally, we could have a 90-minute discussion just about that. And I don't want to tie about certification, and I don't want to tie up the whole evening with that issue. So just in a nutshell, it used to be true to say that all tequilas are mezcals, but not all mezcals are tequilas. And while in the traditional sense of the word, and I feel Esteban getting ready to jump in on this, but in the traditional sense of the word, that's accurate, but in the legal sense, it's not. If you want to call your agave distillate mezcal, label it that. By law, you have to have it certified, and there are rules around that certification. But one of the rules is it has to have been made, that agave distillate has to have been made in one of 9 states. Although there's a history of something like 23 different states in Mexico, 24 different states in Mexico, having made spirits by distilling fermented agave, only 9 are legally allowed to certify, right? So, with that basic understanding, if anybody didn't get that and has some more in-depth questions about that, throw them onto the Q&A, and I'll bring them up. But with that basic understanding, Sal, and any of these questions that I ask that I direct to one of you, I want this to be a conversation. So Germán, if you hear something that he says that you find interesting, just jump on top of it. If you have a different answer for Durango than Michoacan, jump on top of that, please. So,
okay.
Thank you. So Sal, what are some of the different processes for making mezcal in Michoacan, and does the environment in the state play a role at all in shaping the process?
So the question when in thinking about it, it's kind of always framed around what people know the most. I feel like, and a lot of people know the most about Oaxaca production, and so kind of speaking to differences more than just specifically what we do. So obviously, conic earth oven in terms of cooking the agave, that's still something that that Michoacan is known for, and what Michoacan does. I would say that after that is maybe one of the bigger differences in terms of the tahona and actually extracting a lot of juice from the agave post cocción. That might be one of the things that Michoacan does extremely different. Most of our mostos are built around chunkier bagazo, right?
So it's not as fine a milling, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that I've noticed kind of all across the whole state. There has not been a lot of great extraction of juice, right? So when I visited other states, including San Luis Potosí, you see a lot of extraction of juice to make your mosto, to make your must. And in Michoacan, you don't see a lot of that I've noticed. A lot of it is mostly just crushing and entering fermentation vats with water. And when I always talk to people and I'm giving them a simple explanation, the best kind of analogy I can give is kind of like a tea, right? Like when you're making a tea, you put a tea bag in a hot cup of water, and that kind of extracts all of the juice. It's a lot more like that, I would say. So there's not a lot of positive extraction of those juices. So that might be the first difference. Wood fermentation is the same. The difference might be pilas versus tinas. So in Michoacan, a lot of time there's pilas of wood that are submerged in cement, but they're forged with wood around.
So cement underground at the ground.
Yeah, correct. You see a lot of that, but
like an in-ground swimming pool. So
yeah.
So your temperature is gonna be more stable for the fermentation.
Yeah, but I will say this: a lot of areas don't even have the wood, but they do have the cement blocks, right? Like I have a cousin in El Batian in Cotija who does it with just he had a cement square or rectangle, but then he put tile in it, but that was just a choice for cleanliness or attempt to be that. But other areas might just have it be cement, right? So I think there's different things, but a lot of wood round tinas, I've not seen a lot of those. I think that maybe us using them seems a little bit different in Michoacan. And then obviously, lastly, the distillation in the form of distillation. Typically, you're talking about, at least in the Morelia, in a little bit closer region, Morelia, that region, you're going to find a lot of the Tarascan still, the Filipino wood still, and there's going to be no post condensation. So from that still,
you're gonna have to go into detail. Explain what you mean without using the technical terms, my brother.
Yeah. So copper castle heated up by wood in a wood fire, right? A wood still on top,
and it's like a pot, right? It's not even a pot. It's like a dish.
Yeah, it's something that a caso typically something people reference when they talk about like making carnitas, like a copper caso. These are round. They're typically submerged in a cement in an hornilla. So it's very specific. That gets heated up. You have this wood still. It almost looks like wood staves put together, round. And I would say it looks a lot like Durango, maybe a little bit wider, not as narrow that I've seen, at least in pictures. I need to go witness it in person. That's I gotta do.
But without the water on top.
Yeah, exactly. So for Michoacan, you have the copper cone on top. You hit it with cold water. That creates condensation. And typically, coming out of the still is going to be a hotter liquid, right? So whereas if it went through a second condensation, it's going to be cold liquid. In this scenario, a lot of the time, the mezcal that's coming out of that still is going to be hot. So that might be one of the big differences.
And Sal, Chava, are you describing the process that you use or the process that you see most commonly through Michoacan, or both?
So most commonly used in a part of Michoacan, because there's another part of Michoacan that we were just in that's really close to Jalisco, that whole area is using clay pot distillation.
Clay pot?
Yes.
Oh, so that's interesting.
That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions of Michoacan, is that it only does what we see where people most visit. That's going to be the Filipino wood still. And then you have this copper pot, this clay pot distillation, which is, obviously very unique to a lot of the Raicilla area, as well as the Michoacan Vino de Mezcal in Mezcal area. So it's just something that's kind of unique and tied in because of our proximities.
We got a question from Raquel. He wants to know if you have a tradition of distilling in wooden pot stills carved from tree trunks in Michoacan.
There's an area, Rio de Parras, maybe.
Here comes Esteban.
He wants to come in, but he doesn't really want to. So we're gonna kind of reel him in a second. Well, I know that Rio de Parras, at least that region for sure. Yeah, Jorge Perez, he would be maybe someone who's going to be using a tree trunk, hollow tree trunk, to be making his destilado, right? His mezcal. That might be the exception, but overall, you're going to see at least from. So it's a kind of a unique situation, right? Because a lot of people are going to be a part of the Unión de Mezcaleros that are going to be making certified mezcal, or at least attempting to, and then you're going to have these pockets of other areas that are still representing mezcal or vino de mezcal, and they might be doing something different. And this particular gentleman is using a hollow tree trunk as his distillation vessel.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So, Germán, you want to jump anything on top of that? Similarities, differences? Well, no, Durango. Like any similarities or differences? Same question, right?
Well, in Durango, it just depends on where you are, and even if you're in a specific area where there is a tradition of making a mezcal in a certain way, everyone kind of has like their own way of making things. Like maybe they switch a few things, but it's very interesting. There is an area in Durango that makes mezcal very similarly to Michoacan, and it is actually with a tree trunk hollowed in. I actually have I had a few of these made. I'm not a great artist. That's why I asked a friend of mine to draw these up for me. Because we're gonna.
I consider that mustache art, Germán. So you are in your own way an artist.
Stop dissing me about that. All right.
That's all I got.
So I actually have two pictures to show you. So this one is actually something that it's probably very similar to what you guys have in Michoacan with the tree trunk. So as you see, you have the caso over here. It gets heated up. and then it evaporates. The vapor kind of like stays here, and then it condenses because there is a constant flow of cold water on top. And then since it's a conical shape, it goes drop by drop, and then it follows into this bamboo thing. It's called a carrizo, and then it just goes into the bottle.
So sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second just to make sure I get this. So when we're talking tree trunk, we're never talking the tree trunk as the pot. The tree trunk is always the cabeza. It's always the head. That's right. Okay.
So in Durango, it's called a montera. It's almost always called montera, like what you put on top of the caso. So the caso is almost always made out of copper. I've seen a few that aren't. Sometimes they don't last as long. Sometimes copper is expensive, like to get it to the right caliber for distillation. Caliber, I mean the thickness of the copper, but it's mainly copper. And I mean, if you were to make a caso out of wood, it would just burn instantly. So that's not a good idea. So the Montera is just to kind of like concentrate all of the steam. So that's one of the tree trunks that is used. And then this one is in the high Sierra of Tepehuanes. So
wow.
So this one is extremely inefficient, but it makes very delicious mezcal. So
which is kind of a common theme, right? The inefficiency produces such beautiful, not always, but often.
Okay, so this one, this one is a beauty because even though it looks so simple, it's actually very complicated because even the shape of the cone that kind of gets all of the cold water, it has to be at a certain angle so that the particles of mezcal, or basically of vapor, that aren't mezcal, don't fall all the way to the tip of the cone and then fall into the bottle. So they get all of the really big droplets of vapor, kind of like drop back into the castle.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt again. Sorry, but we've already got 3 questions asking what type of tree is being used.
That is actually, I mean, it can be made out of whatever they have at hand. This is used in Tamazula, which is a very, very low area of the Sierra in Durango. So it's around 600 meters above sea level. And it's very tropical weather. It's extremely hot. So what you get there, I mean, if you're near a river, you would probably get Sabino, which I think it's called Sabine tree in English. But it can be made out of just any very old tree because, I mean, the trunk has to be very kind of wide.
I like that people are asking the question because it suggests to me that they intend to build their own stills at home using the trees in their backyard. That's why I like the question.
If anyone manages to do that, please send me pictures and I will come visit you.
And do not send the pictures to Homeland Security because they will also come and visit you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
All right. So this second one is it's actually a lot more simple. In the sense that it's closer to what is more common here in Durango. So it's basically the fire is over here. The caso has all of the mosto. All of the vapor gets kind of like concentrated into this tree trunk, and then it follows into this. This is what is supposed to be the coil, the copper coil, kind of what we call the serpentine. But this is actually just a straight kind of line. It's made into like a cone shape, and this is copper. But I mean, in my opinion, it makes delicious mezcal, basically because of the agave and everything else that they're doing there. But in my opinion, there isn't enough surface area of copper there for condensation to happen. So what you do get is a lot of vapor coming out in the end, and that is just a loss. That means you're losing mezcal instead of.
Yeah, but am I correct in saying that you characterize what comes out of there as delicious?
It is delicious. I mean,
so maybe what you're losing is some of the not quite as delicious. So isn't that okay?
Okay, so that's what I thought, but then I met another vinatero in that same area. In fact, they were just a few meters away, and this guy is just all about innovation, and he doesn't. I mean, he's not like tied down to tradition or anything. He's distilling out of one copper and one stainless steel still. and he is actually triple distilling it, and his mezcal is absolutely delicious. So I mean, who am I to question how he's gonna make mezcal?
Well, I'm not
And
suggesting I think if the end result is beautiful, I'm just not ready to complain that you're losing mezcal, right?
no, not at all. But I mean, that's kind of like for them. If maybe they want to get a little bit more mezcal out of what they're making, I don't know. This is the traditional method in that area, and it's still very beautiful because even though these look very simple to make, they're actually extremely complex, and they require a lot of knowledge and a lot of just practice, basically. Like making one is not the full story. It's actually knowing how to run one, and it's understanding every single piece of that still. So it's interesting.
And okay, so I've got two questions related to that that have popped up here. One is, boy, I'm going to butcher this word. Huicholi still? The second one is a Huicholi, similar to a Huicholi still?
It's similar, but the Huicholes don't. Wait, who said that? That's actually really interesting that they know that, because
it's Shad, of course. Shad knows everything.
All right, that's awesome. Congrats.
We got somebody coming in on it. We got the Esteban.
I know Esteban would know about the Huicholes because it's actually, Huichol mezcal is made in the area which is very close to Jalisco and to Nayarit. Exactly. So it's something like that, but it's not a tree trunk. So they kind of like combine the regular viejo, like from Nombre de Dios and Mezquital, and they make it into, hold on 1 second. So it's a combination between this.
Yeah. Wow. Dude, you had so many drawings made for this. I love your screen share.
And this.
Okay.
So that's what you see in Durango. It's always a marriage of different methods. And as soon as vinateros, yeah, those are the ones, nice one. As soon as the vinateros start meeting other vinateros, they all start to experiment, which is absolutely awesome. I like that. I think tradition started somewhere, so why not? Why not keep on innovating?
And one more question, then we got to move on to the next thing. We're 48 minutes in, and we've had one question. So but Freddie asked an interesting question. Is this the type of still that's used to make tepe?
Yes.
I knew that would get Esteban in.
So I don't know what tepe is. I haven't heard of it in Durango.
Esteban, show your face. Show your face.
Can you enlighten us, please?
He's not gonna. Okay.
He's coming.
All these pictures that I show you by the tree trunk, the box, and the culebra are from the very, very tail of Durango.
Of Durango, yeah.
That is a frontier with Nayarit and Zacatecas.
And Jalisco.
Just for 1 mile out of Jalisco, we don't touch.
Yeah.
But it's like 4 states combined, and there is a huge community of Tepehuanos there.
And Huicholes.
It's Huicholes, Coras, and Tepehuanos, but very in a funny way, each ethnic group chooses a state to live. So there is not Tepehuanos living in Jalisco, they just live in Durango. There is not Huicholes living in Durango, they just live in Jalisco. And
I disagree, sorry.
Yeah, but it's a few, it's like, if there is 1 million people of Huichol, there is just 100 people in Durango. There is not like the whole community. They just move around in very contemporary time. And now in the Coras, basically they live in Nayarit. So, and all the pictures that I show you is from this tale of Durango, that is tepe production from the Tepehuanos people. And
but what kind of agave is it? Are they using Castilla? I mean, that's what they regularly use, and once in a while they use tepemete.
They use basically the Castilla, but in the Huichol community they call it Mai to the Castilla, and tepemete is for all over, all the way to Guadalajara in the canyon. that Guadalajara ends, and very nicely, the Huichol steel used to be more like Campanilla style in San Luis Potosí, and they copy from the Tepehuanos the tree trunk with the culebra in a wooden box for condensation water.
Okay, just something really quickly, just to because I think a lot of people are gonna get confused. So this is in Tepehuanes, but you have no Tepehuanos living in Tepehuanes. There is a very gruesome history.
That is so Mexican.
So the Tepehuanos actually came from Tepehuanes, but they all got exiled into this tiny area of Durango, and that's where you have 4 ethnic groups basically living. And they don't live in the same communities, but we do have all 4 different ethnic groups, which are the Huicholes, the Tepehuanos, which is the largest ethnic group in Durango, and then we have the Huicholes, the Coras, and the Mexicaneros. Mexicaneros are tiny representation, but
and that's just one community that's going to like mess with your head. Trying to figure all of that out is just one tiny community.
It's extremely complex because even with the Tepehuanos, you have different dialects of Tepehuano as well, and it just gets really complicated. And the Tepehuanos basically fled Tepehuanes, and some of them went to Chihuahua. They're called I think Tepehuanos del Norte or something like that, and then the Tepehuanos del Sur are the ones who live in Mezquital. Mezquital is huge. It's an enormous municipality. It's the biggest municipality in Durango, and from one end to the other. So what Esteban is talking about, the very southern tip of Durango, it takes you around 6 hours just to get there, and it's a very conflicted area in terms of violence. So it's extremely hard to get there. But it's very, very culturally rich, and I don't know if you wanted to meet any of these members of these communities. I think the easiest way is to just drive down to their kind of municipality capital. I guess it's called San Francisco del Mezquital, and that's the only place where all of these communities get together because it's where they can get health services or education or just basic groceries and things like that they need to buy.
Okay, let's get to that second question. And this was going to be yours, but you said a lot of things, Germán. So I'm going to throw this one back to Sal because I haven't heard his beautiful voice in a while. And since he and I are going to be married soon so that I can get through the lines faster, I should make sure that I hear his voice. Okay, so the next question is, how is being so far from the offices of the CRM, the body that certifies Mezcal, how does it affect the process of certification to be so far from those offices?
I think the word that comes to mind for me is lag. There's a huge lag between when we would love to be done with our process to when we get certified to be able to come to the States. There's only certain tranches of the month that get allocated to us in terms of like, that's when people are coming and when we would have to schedule things out. And we have to plan, we have to plan on their calendar versus I'm assuming, and this is a complete assumption, in Oaxaca, because of the proximity, they might have access every day. And I think that might be maybe one of the biggest thing, because it's in processes, right? So from witnessing what's going into the oven to witnessing what we're doing in our fermentation vats to then seeing what our final process is according to our ledger, it all takes time. And so every visit might delay those processes because we might say, hey, this ferment that we thought we might be distilling by now is not. So we're gonna have to wait until when that distillation is done for them to come back next month and come check it out. So I think that lag time definitely is very inefficient for us, to move a little bit faster. And so, we work hand in hand as much as we can. But I would say that the distance presents that barrier more than anything.
Okay. And so they literally have to be there to watch every single step?
Not watch everything, but like validate it, right? So typically speaking, they're a part of actually seeing what agave is going into the oven, or what came out, one of the two, and then witnessing what that was to then being fermented, and then lastly the distillation of it, and being quantified by our vats so that it makes sense. Because if anything's out of line, there's always going to be questions, I'm assuming, for everybody, right? So if someone put a 8-ton oven of espadín in and yielded some crazy amount of liquid, I'm sure there's going to be some questions in between, right? Because there's logical math to all of it because there's historical facts to it. So
sure, and so even with all those headaches, you feel it's worth it to certify as mezcal rather than just exporting as agave spirits.
So the question of being worth it, I think that's maybe not the way we look at it. From the get-go, we were always in the path of being a mezcal, being certified as mezcal. And so that process, before I even had my intention of trying to express a state in a broader sense, that was already happening. And being and doing the work to kind of be within those parameters of both analysis and just a CRM, I think kind of ensures us a path to market that means something to the word mezcal right now, because obviously it's not owned by people, it's owned by the government. And so we kind of work within it. It's I don't know. I would question what we would be perceived as if we made a quick shift without any explanation. You know, it's a value to what we do, to the people that work with us, and so we continue to do it. And we've never really said, "Oh, let's just abandon ship and let's switch." So it's kind of been like, and it hasn't, for us though, as challenging as it is, it hasn't been that challenging, right? Like it hasn't been that tough.
Okay.
I've lost a lot of hair in the last 4 years, but not necessarily just because of that. So,
did you lose it or did it migrate to your back? Let's be honest.
No, migrated to my back. I believe so.
Okay.
I've lost, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that's the Chavez side of me. All my uncles and my dad, they lose their hair pretty quickly. So, it's one of those things. We're kind of aligned. We're working within those kind of concepts every day. And we can, I think that the reality between being certified or not certified, sometimes is going to be people's willingness or ability to do it. And we fortunately have the ability to do it. So due to that, I think that we will continue to do it. But I understand that some people don't. And it's always one of those challenges where, like, even in Michoacán, where we have our Ruta de Mezcal map, it's trying to enforce the proper representation of everyone who's making a destilado or a mezcal, whether it's certified or not, to be represented on that map so that people can visit them, right? Because they're still making, by true virtue of what it is, a mezcal every single day. So, they should be represented on that map, and we work towards that as well, because it's only fair. We just happen to have the ability and the intention to be certified, and we can do it. So we do.
Nice. And Germán, what about you?
I really don't like that question because there's always someone who gets offended or has very strong opinions about that.
Whoa. The question was, because you're so far away from the offices of the CRM, is it difficult to certify? That's the actual question.
Well, it is. It's the infrastructure for the CRM definitely isn't what it should be like. It's definitely it definitely shows that there are massive gaps in terms of representation between the states that produce mezcal, and I've had conversations with people in the CRM about this, and they say, well, why should we have a full-time office in Durango if there aren't enough people who are certified? And I always tell them it's kind of like a chicken and egg question, that there aren't many people who are certifying their mezcales because there isn't an office here in Durango. You guys are not exactly making it easy for us to certify. And Durango is such a huge state, and it's so mountainous. It's full of places that are so remote that it's almost impossible and extremely expensive to have someone go over there and certify a vinata and verify all of your batches. It just becomes extremely difficult to do that. And we have done it for most of our vinateros. Some of them we will not be able to, we just have to kind of come to terms with that, because with some of the vinateros, it actually takes us, what was it the last time? It was like around 10 hours just to get there. And then, and then 10 hours to get back. And it's in roads that are not even on a GPS. You have to get some sort of like special GPS that kind of like shows you tracks. Some places are just dangerous.
What do they call that GPS, Herman?
I actually don't know. That I normally go with a guide that works in the forestry resources.
So Sherpa. It's like a Sherpa, a mezcal Sherpa.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
So every time I go up into the High Sierra, I always call him, because there's no way that I would make it back if I go through that on my own. So to do that with a verifier every single time you have to certify a batch, it's just impossible, you know. So it is difficult. The fact that the CRM is not there, it does leave us in a massive disadvantage against other states if you consider this a competition. Honestly, it shouldn't be, but at the same time, we should all have the same representation, no matter how many distilleries there are in every state. And that is if you agree with the whole certification process, which I do, but I understand that many people don't. And as I was saying, there are many vinatas that are not certified because they want to keep making mezcal the way that they've been making it for many generations. And I have nothing against that. It's just, you know, they're just different kind of like motivations of making mezcal. Some people just want to make mezcal for their own communities, and that's it. They're not interested in exporting. So why should they certify?
Right. Yeah, that's the beauty of the tradition. So this one is certainly going to get Esteban back into the screen. So, you know, as we're seeing, well, like Raicilla, right, just became a denomination of origin. And so suddenly we're becoming aware of all these other names for agave spirits within Jalisco, that it's not just tequila and Raicilla, right? There's all these other names. I'm wondering, you know, as I'm looking at your states and as we're talking about vinatas, right, in both of your states, vinata suggests that the name is not mezcal, it's vino de mezcal, right? But we never hear, I shouldn't say we, I never hear of anybody talking about bringing that historical name back. And I'm guessing that much like these other states, like Jalisco, that it's not just everything was called vino de mezcal. Is there a movement to try and bring back older names? Does nobody, like, I get that it'd be really hard to create a DO around the word vino, but what is the view of these historical names, and are there historical names that we've lost that anyone's trying to bring back?
Who? Sorry, if you want to go first.
I don't know. Let's start with Herman this time.
Let's go.
I mean, it hasn't been lost, at least in Durango. People still call it vino. Like if you go to the vinatas in the mountains, at least, everyone talks about mezcal in terms of the agave itself. And then vino, they call it what everyone else calls mezcal.
So I get that you bottle under mezcal, and everything that I've seen when I visited Durango has been bottled as mezcal. But is anybody bottling, even like somebody at their home, and putting something on the label that says vino?
So I've had this discussion with many people, and I think we all agree that, like, if you're gonna bottle it, it's gonna make it very complicated if everyone comes at something different. Yeah. Not only just that label, but there are many other labels. There's one that I didn't listen to the people that I was talking to, and our new labels are actually gonna say Maestro Vinatero rather than Maestro Mezcalero, because that's what they are. They're vinateros. They're not Maestros Mezcaleros. That's something very common to Oaxaca. But there are other things that, I mean, it would be ideal, but it would take so much education for the consumer to be able to understand all of the terminology from every single state. Like, I bet even Esteban and Chava have a difficult time whenever they travel somewhere new, and they're trying to understand the vinatero or the palenquero talking to them. You know, there's so many like slangs. I mean, sometimes I go to a vinata here in Durango, and they say like ya está hirviendo. It means it's fermenting. You know, it's boiling. Or ya está chorreando. It means that the still is actually going. They call it, I don't know, the first distillation, they call it toro in some places, like está toreando. And I go like, what do you mean by está toreando? It's like, yeah, I mean, this is the first distillation, so we're going to put it back, and then we're going to get vino. There's just so much confusing terminology that if you open the floodgates, it's going to get out of control completely.
Okay, I say open the floodgates. Let's get it out of control.
If you have a completely anarchistic point of view, then yes, okay, call it whatever tradition calls it. But then again, what is tradition? You know, like from where does it start?
Yeah. Okay, what you got? What you got, Chava?
So a few things. I would say that from my perspective, the one thing that I think, you know, going back to what we're talking about in terms of the word mezcal to then anything else, because there's a lot of other terminologies. What seems to me, because obviously even like on a very personal basis, I went back to Michoacan due to the word mezcal and when mezcal started growing. So clearly that denomination of origin and the word opened up the world to start, you know, inquiring about what else is out there, right? So, and thanks to that, well, you know, that I say that loosely, thanks to that, now we have this great conversation where we're even discussing what other words we can use. As far as the U.S. goes, there's a gatekeeper to what makes it across the border, and that typically is a TTB. And the TTB at this point, I think, has allowed for destilado de agave distillate. You know, recently, with the gentleman who does the Puntas expression, right, for La Venenosa. He got the Vino del Cerro approved by the TTB.
Lobo.
So I think that obviously means there's going to be some pivots and there's going to be some acceptance of different terminology. Which market is bigger, right? Like in terms of like, you know, if you go to market and you have a very unique destilado and there's people captivated and listening and willing to purchase it, fortunately for you, your product will sell. You very well could sell faster what you have in inventory than someone else that brings up a mezcal, a certified mezcal, right? So right. I think the market, you know, I've always been a thinker, at least in the sense that the market kind of dictates what's going to go. And typically that usually is palate based, right? So if the palate says this is great, then let it sell. I would be of the mindset that there's nothing, because mezcal is so big, you know, even recently, you know, looking at the CRM report from 2019, I think, I forget what the exact numbers were, but what percentage made up the uncertified mezcal category, uncertified agave?
They cannot own that numbers. They just guess.
Fair. But even if they were a little bit off, north or south, it's still, you know, the mezcal category is fairly big, right, in comparison.
Well, so, yeah, but even the mezcal category is tiny compared to tequila.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So I think we're without saying let's not fight within ourselves. We right. should be competing against our whatever I would call it our son. And when I say tequila or our daughter, whatever, you know, it would be some
daughter.
Yeah, I always found it fascinating that people said that tequila was mezcal's anything because mezcal came first, right? Without mezcal, there was never tequila. So I don't understand how that whole thing came to be, but you know, so you know, we're in competition with that, and reality is to a certain degree, you know, we're obviously just we are benefiting a lot of different regions that were never benefited.
Yeah.
So
I just before we move on, I don't want anyone to comment on this, but because Esteban showed us the Lobo label, I'm just going to say Cuaste Comate, and I'm going to move on from there.
Now you got him in.
Ah, God, I want Quasta Comate in the USA, but that's another story. So
recipe will be submitted and waiting for the TTV to do all the shit done for Costa Comate.
did you just swear in my webinar?
But the thing is, like, we get accepted by TTV the word Vino del Cerro.
Yep.
So Vino is going to be in the label. And it's not just because the meaning, but it's because it's Spanish and the TTV doesn't give a shit
Yeah, they don't understand.
in Spanish words.
That's 2 times I'm going to have to beep you in the edits.
Because if we add wine, we never get the approval of that. You know,
Sure.
So we are abusing the keep alive part of the traditions in the local areas of Mexico. So
The thing is, you're saying vino, and rightly so. But why not just spell it differently, like BEENO, and then the TTB, they won't understand that. So then
I will say this though. I think we were talking about this on the way back home today. The concept, the common kind of terminology is vino de mezcal. And I think that confuses a lot of people because a lot of times they're thinking it's a wine of what we deem to be mezcal, which is
sure.
But a lot of the regions, they consider the agave, they call it mezcal.
Yeah.
So they're referring to the idea that it's a vino of that agave. So it very well could be vino de agave, vino de maguey, but they call it vino de mezcal because they call it that. In certain regions.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so they would say, "Oh, that is vino de mezcal," but the mezcal they're referring to is actual plants.
Yeah,
that's a mezcal.
Germán just said it the same way. It happens in Durango. It's a very common terminology all over Mexico. Like
it used to happen in Jalisco, right? Like the old people still call it the mezcal. They're referring to the agave.
Even in tequila.
Yeah.
So if you go to tequila fields, the jimadores called mezcales to the agaves.
Yeah. Very confusing for me when I was doing up in Aranda, the actual people working the fields, they were like, "Oh, y el mezcal cuando está listo, y el mezcal a 5 años o 6 años," and I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" I didn't understand that he was referring to the actual agave plant as mezcal.
That's the answer to your question, Lou.
Yeah, that was it. Like that was the missing link of that word and how that's all. So vino del cerro makes a lot of sense, especially if you visit the areas where they're made. It's vino of the hills of the sierra, right? Like you're up there.
All right, but hold on. What happens is, and this is very common in Durango, that they mix sotol and agave. What do you call it?
Ensamble chingón.
Call it
ensamble chingón.
Germán, call it. The producer call it and enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. So
good luck guy to have it,
So for instance, these guys just say vino. That's it. Can you imagine trying to export it to the US?
You're gonna have to mute it, Lou. You have to mute it.
Dude, TTV just accepted vino del cerro. Call it vino del cerro, güey.
All I know is we lost 10 viewers after the dog left the screen. That's all I know.
Okay.
Get the damn dog back. Okay, so we've got like 15 minutes left, and I've lost my notes. So let me just ask this one question that I can remember, because so each January for the last 2 years, I've visited Durango with a group of hospitality workers, right? And this most recent time, there's the puppy dog. This most recent trip, 3 of the attendees had never been to Mexico before. And the point of view that they brought to the trip was fascinating to me. And on one of the last days, Kelly said, as we were sitting by that fire in Mariano's place, Kelly said, "I think I get it now. So mezcal in Oaxaca is industrial, but mezcal in Durango is actually artisanal." And I bring this up because I suspect, since that, like, her point of view was formed in a very odd way. Her first view of making mezcal was the view from Durango, where most people, the view is Oaxaca. I'm wondering how much resistance, oh, that is so beautiful. How much resistance do you guys see when you walk into a bar or a restaurant or a bottle store and you present your mezcal from a place that isn't Oaxaca?
I would say that it's an uphill challenge all the time. Typically speaking, it's every single time not understanding it, with the exception of a few small, and I'm assuming they might be within the audience, which I think is amazing. It's tough. I think I was telling Esteban today. We recently made this publication on Facebook, and every single response we got, with the exception of the last one in the last 2 hours, was that everyone said the only mezcal that exists is from Oaxaca. The only good mezcal is from Oaxaca. The only this was from Oaxaca. And it was like, holy, like this is, most people don't understand it. They don't, people from Michoacan that are in the States that would see the shirt that says mezcal from Michoacan. They're like, there's no mezcal in Michoacan. And they might be unaware of it, right? But obviously it exists. And in Oaxaca, it's not even a question. Mezcal is obviously a part of Oaxaca history and culture all the way through, from each side of the border, east, west, north, south. And in Michoacan, there's some people that really don't understand that it's a part of their region or their state, right? Because there's certain regions of it that they might not produce it, and they don't know it all too well, right? So kind of challenging for sure.
Gotcha. And German, before you have anything to add to that, Shad's going to be very angry if I do not tell you that you and I have to fight for our right to party.
Fight.
Fight. Okay. Now, go ahead. Do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Chava. I think we have similar experiences in terms of that. Even people in Durango City don't really know much about mezcal. So I've actually met people that didn't know that Durango made mezcal even up today, which certainly for me is a challenge. I see it kind of like an opportunity to teach a lot of people that like what is made in Durango. It depends on where you go, because it can go either way. So if you go into a bar that already knows mezcal and they're absolutely passionate about it, as soon as I show up and I tell them that I have a mezcal from Durango, they go crazy. They like, everyone wants to try it. Like, all of the bartenders gather up and they're very intrigued about what I'm offering. But at the same time, I've been to bars, especially in Mexico City, where I try to teach them about mezcal from Durango, and they tell me, well, I've always known that the good mezcal comes from Oaxaca. And so I'm like, well, there is good mezcal in Oaxaca, but there's also very good mezcal in Durango. And the age of tradition is around the same age as well. So it's not like traditional mezcal is only from Oaxaca.
We just need to send Kelly around to the bars in Mexico City.
Yeah.
She'll educate them. Okay, so again, like we're now we got 12 minutes, and I got a question I really want to ask, because it's like I promised we would talk about sustainability, and there's no way for us to get into the full depth of it. And in fact, the smartest guy I know, whenever you bring up sustainability, is Esteban, who's off screen, because he says screw us the word sustainability. It's about best practices, and he's right. But I want to get to the salient point of the cost of agave.
I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone.
Have you had too much cheese?
In 10 minutes, let's have another conversation on that. And thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you guys here.
Okay, so as we are looking at all of these conversations about wild agave disappearing in Oaxaca and the price of agave skyrocketing in Oaxaca, what does that look like in Durango and in Michoacan? Well, compared to what they're paying for agave in Oaxaca, what are you guys paying in your respective states? And does it look different because there's less demand for the mezcal that comes out of your states?
I would say that the thing agave that I would use as like the one is Cuprieta, because that's the one that dominates, especially that inner area of Morelia and things that surround it. And Cuprieta prices have at least tripled in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So, it's happening here just as much as it is there for at least the core agave that's readily available, or at least planted in abundance.
And that's it's farmed Cuprieta.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
It also goes back to who's in the know, right? So a farmer who might be in the know and is aware of what I would deem market prices, he would know that his agave is now worth more. And so they've reached definitely higher prices. From what I've seen in all the way in Etucuaro, which I've seen people planting that every day, to other region of Michoacan that people have it, it's all more expensive. The Blue Weber or Tequilana agave, typically most of the people that plant it or have it know the market price of Tequilana, certified or with the guia. And so they would price it at least a little bit under that if it's not going to be for tequila. But all the way through, it's more expensive for us over here as well.
And Germán?
It's extremely complicated because it depends on what agave you're talking about and what area. For instance, with Cenizo, I mean, if anyone who has come to Durango knows that there is plenty of Cenizo. There's a lot of it, which is mostly wild. There are plantations which aren't ready yet, but there's a lot of Cenizo. So the price hasn't really risen that much, but the problem is that we have very low yields of Cenizo. Whereas with other agaves, which
hang on, when you're saying low yields,
that means you need a lot more kilos of agave to produce 1 liter of mezcal.
Gotcha.
Right.
And that's traditionally an issue with this particular variety of agave.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a blessing and a curse because it's a blessing because it's everywhere. You know, in the places where there is Cenizo, you see massive amounts of land with Cenizo, but you need a lot of it to be able to produce mezcal, especially in certain seasons. And then there are the.
But if you were talking about Tepamete, say, which should be exported to Texas, then what would you be talking about?
Well, Tepamete is extremely expensive. I mean, it's very high yield, but it's a tiny agave. The piña is like around this big. The agave is I mean, it doesn't take very long for it to grow, but it's.
What was it? It was around this, like a softball? Like a softball size?
I would say like a pineapple, like an actual pineapple.
Really?
Yeah, that's the size of the piña.
Like the size of your head.
Yeah, kind of.
But without the mustache.
Hopefully. But yeah, the yield is very good. But the thing is that it's very, very hard for you to reproduce that agave. So it's mostly found in the wild. We've tried many ways to reproduce it, and I think the only efficient way of reproducing that agave is through replanting hijuelos. But I won't get into that because there isn't a lot of time left. But there are certain agaves, and I would like to really raise this point because there are certain agaves like Castilla, like what Esteban was talking about in the southern tip of Durango, that are very high yield. They're humongous agaves. The piñas are massive. You need very few of them to make a batch of mezcal. But that caught the eye of many tequileros, which are illegally obtaining it, and they're not even waiting for the agave to mature. So we actually have an environmental crisis going on right now that not many people are talking about. And there are a lot of rare agaves that are just being like harvested, not reaching maturity level and being taken to Jalisco for that. Obviously that whole area is as I said, it's not very secure. So there isn't a lot of ways to kind of keep an eye so that doesn't happen. Yeah. So I don't know. The only way is just to make sure that, I mean, if you're drinking tequila, make sure that you know the practices, as Esteban said, of that producer.
God, I don't even know how you do that, right?
So I've heard of entire fields of wild mascarillo being used for sugar production. So
when you say sugar production, sugar for tequila?
Like inulin. No, sugar.
Oh, just like to make sugar?
Yeah.
God, I want to taste that sugar. Right?
You taste it in all the Tommy's margaritas, dude. Don't margaritas. Don't drink fucking agaves. We want to talk about sustainability.
I think we should
Java,
just do
I
it.
appreciate that attempt to censor. That was beautiful.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a sin. I mean, it's such a rare agave that, like, for it to be used in something that shouldn't, it's just, I mean, just for its sugar content.
Like that's another 90 minutes, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I used to be of that view, and I'm guessing that Esteban would beat me up to hear me say it. So keep your side over there silenced, Chava. But like God, I'm such mixed minds here, right? Like I want the world to embrace and love this spirit, and I feel like that only happens if you meet them where they are, and where they are, at least in the USA. I'm not going to speak to any other country, but is cocktails, and I think you can effectively move a lot of people from cocktails, particularly using spirits like the ones you guys make, and specifically using the Tequilana from La Luna. You can move people from a margarita to drinking spirits neat, and once they start down that road, if I'm in any indication, they'll spend a lot more money on the spirits, which means that in theory you end up spending a lot more money in these communities that are so important, that can help them sustain what they're doing as they're trying to fight this thing that is going to overtake them regardless, right?
Yeah, I would say, for us, I feel like what happened with our Cuprieta expression and how it's moved into or shifted into that kind of the cocktail scene. It has presented some sort of segue into trying a lot more products or other mezcal as neat as it should be treated, right? For me, it's one of those things where it presents a huge opportunity, because I've always mentioned that the industry is kind of the gatekeepers of information. Yep. And they're always the ones really presenting the knowledge that people really need to understand it and appreciate it and move into, why would I spend that much money sipping a spirit? Once you understand what it takes for an agave to grow, to mature, and then what it takes to produce and all the things, especially if you're talking about a traditional spirit, it justifies the price that 10 times. And I feel like the industry, especially because they cocktail with it, then provide that path to them thinking, I understand why I should be sipping it and why we have a growing trend of people buying bottles to sip at home.
Yeah. Okay, so we're now at our end. So I'm just going to do our farewell unless somebody has something they cannot, and by somebody I mean Herman, has something they cannot hold their tongue on. Herman, anything?
No, actually, I don't know. Maybe you have something in mind that I
No, not at all. I'm very. Oh, wait a minute. Crap. One last. Oh, has Fabiola had her baby, and how are they doing?
Yeah, she's had 3 babies already, so I don't know who's asking that.
It's Shad. God bless Shad. He's been drinking with us the whole night. Okay.
All right. The thing is that I have a friend he's from the Netherlands, but he's only been in Durango whilst Fabiola is pregnant. So whenever like he sees her, he goes like, "Are you always pregnant? What's going on?" But no, yeah, she's had twins and a baby girl. So
yeah. Wow, nice.
And she's back in the distillery, obviously mostly working from home, but she goes there once in a while just to make sure that everything is in order.
I love Fabiola. She's great. That's there again. There's another 90 minutes just talking about somebody who approached this from the scientific side and has been moving back to the traditional side, but using science to justify it. I think what she does is fascinating. Anyway, okay, so I want to thank you both. Actually, I'd say all 4 of you, right? Because I want to include Esteban. And what was the dog's name, Chava?
What's the dog's name? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Cómo? Pilón.
Pilón?
Pilón.
What does that translate to?
Pilón?
It's the free one.
The free one.
The free one. Nice.
That kind of like the extra one, like the unplanned one.
We'll call it the 5 people on the panel. And I want to apologize real quick on the way out for being late, because you understand my challenges driving really fast.
Yeah. Yeah. We all understand that now. Somebody had a little too much cheese on the road. Okay, so I want to thank you guys. The video for this should be live on the Sacred YouTube page within a few hours, but I'm going to send out an email to everybody tomorrow with the link, and add on top of that links to all the things that we talked about earlier in terms of things that people can do who are interested in this stuff. If you like this talk, Mezcalistas has a whole, I'm reading from a script, can you tell? Whatever. Okay.
No.
So Mezcalistas has a whole series of online agave talks that you'll want to check out, including actually this one on Monday evening that's featuring my friend Alex Jandernoa from Banez. So he's going to be discussing how climate change is affecting which agave not are endemic, or not native to, but are actually growing in specific regions in Mexico. And then I'm going to be sharing a Tales of the Cocktail session this Monday with Pedro Jimenez of Mezonte and Carmen Villarreal. I'm going to say that, yeah, of Pueblo Viejo and Corazon Tequila, talking about how agave can save the world. So check out the events at sacred.mx for details. Stay safe and stay sane. Guys, you got any last words?
No, I just wanted to thank you for doing this, because I think I speak for everyone in this industry. We're having a very hard time. So these things actually keep people interested in mezcal, and if they don't have a bottle at hand, it makes them kind of want to try one. So thanks very much for hosting these things, these talks.
And I would ditto what Germán said, and just lastly, thank you very much. Obviously, we're all working together to try to grow the knowledge around this whole thing. So, thank you very much for hosting this.
Okay. Catch you guys later. Stay safe. Stay sane.
Salud.
Salud. And fight.
Fight.